Welcome, and good evening. This is Jaded, Tales of Survival, and I'm your host, The Matrix 23. Join us as we tell original stories, from deep within the exiled lands, and from our imaginations. If you enjoyed today's content, please like and subscribe. Hadvar lived deep within the Himalayas, a solitary figure amongst the towering mountains and dense forests. He was a skilled hunter and trapper, providing for himself by catching game and foraging for food. But his peaceful existence was shattered when a terrible plague swept through his village, claiming the lives of his family. Devastated and alone, Hadvar roamed the mountains, his only companions the howling wind and the distant cry of wild animals. It was during one of his hunts that he stumbled upon another lone traveler named Aslan. The two men exchanged wary glances before cautiously approaching each other, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. After a tense introduction, Hadvar and Aslan decided to camp together for the night, seeking solace in each other's company. As they sat by the crackling fire, the flames casting eerie shadows on their faces, Aslan hesitantly revealed the true reason for his presence in the mountains. "I am not here to hunt," Aslan confessed, his voice low and tinged with guilt. "I am tracking a criminal, a dangerous man who is wanted dead or alive." Hadvar raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the mysterious stranger's revelation. He listened intently as Aslan described the criminal's heinous deeds, his heart hardened with a newfound sense of purpose. The criminal's camp was close by, Aslan explained, but he couldn't confront him alone. He needed help, and he hoped that Hadvar would be willing to assist him in bringing the fugitive to justice. Without hesitation, Hadvar agreed to join Aslan on his mission. The two men shared a solemn nod before settling down for the night, their minds consumed by thoughts of the impending confrontation. As dawn broke across the rugged landscape, Hadvar and Aslan set off towards the criminal's camp, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of snow. As they approached the makeshift shelter, tension hung heavy in the air, their hands gripping their weapons tightly. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Hadvar launched himself at the criminal, surprising him with his speed and ferocity. The man put up a feeble resistance, but it was no match for Hadvar's skill and determination. In a matter of moments, the criminal lay at Hadvar's feet, his life extinguished by a fatal blow. Splitting his head in half, Hadvar turned to Aslan, a triumphant grin on his face. But his expression faltered when he realized that Aslan was no longer standing beside him. Confusion clouded his mind as he scanned the surroundings, searching for any sign of the mysterious traveler. And then, out of the corner of his eye, Hadvar caught a glimpse of movement. Two heavily armed guards emerged from the shadows, their faces set in grim lines. They wasted no time in apprehending Hadvar, their iron grip unyielding as they dragged him away from the scene of the crime. As they marched him towards an awaiting council member, the guards explained the truth behind the man he had killed. He was not a criminal, but a high-ranking tribe member who had been out on a hunt. His death would not go unpunished, they warned, his tribe demanding retribution for the senseless act of violence. And so, in a cruel twist of fate, Hadvar found himself exiled to the harsh desert, his days of freedom and solitude stripped away in an instant. As he trudged across the scorching sands, his heart heavy with regret and sorrow, Hadvar could only wonder at the cruel hand of destiny that had led him down this path of destruction. Alone and forsaken, the once proud hunter and trapper now faced a future filled with endless hardship and suffering. And as the blazing sun beat down upon his weary shoulders, Hadvar vowed to never again let himself be swayed by the promises of justice and righteousness, for in the end, it had only brought him despair. Hadvar had never imagined his life would take such a dark turn. Once a respected hunter in his village, he had been cast out into the unforgiving desert, left to fend for himself in a world where survival was a constant struggle. Forced to become a mercenary to make ends meet, he had quickly gained a reputation as a ruthless killer, willing to do whatever it took to survive. As he sat in the dimly lit tavern, the stench of sweat and ale heavy in the air, Hadvar scanned the room for potential work. His eyes fell on a shady-looking man in the corner, who motioned for him to come over. Intrigued, Hadvar made his way across the room. The man introduced himself as Gideon, a well-known figure in the criminal underworld. He spoke in hushed tones, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He told Hadvar about a possible bounty, a dangerous criminal who had eluded capture for years. He was wanted by a local gang of thugs, who were offering a hefty reward for his head. Hadvar's interest was piqued. He had never taken on a bounty of this magnitude before, but the promise of gold was too tempting to resist. He accepted the job, and Gideon slipped a crumpled piece of parchment into his hand, with information to get him started. As Hadvar set out to track down his target, a sense of unease settled in the pit of his stomach. Something about this job felt off, but he pushed aside his doubts and focused on the task at hand. As he traveled deeper into the desert, following the trail of clues left by his prey, memories of his own exile haunted him. He remembered the day he had been cast out, left to wander the unforgiving desert with nothing but his wits and his spear. The anger that consumed him, for months, was only growing stronger. As he finally caught sight of the man he was hunting, it was Aslan, the very man responsible for his exile. A wave of rage and anger washed over him. The man who had betrayed him was now standing before him. Hadvar's hands clenched into fists, his jaw set in a hard line. Without hesitation, he drew his spear and charged, his heart pounding in his chest. Aslan turned to face him, a sneer on his lips, but it was too late. Hadvar's spear plunged into his chest, blood spurting out in a gory spray. Aslan fell to the ground, eyes wide with shock, and then all was silent. As Hadvar stood over the lifeless body of his former enemy, a sense of satisfaction washed over him. He had avenged his exile, and had rid the world of a dangerous criminal. But as he looked down at the blood on his hands, a sense of emptiness crept into his heart. He had become the very thing he had despised, a cold-blooded killer who would do anything for a price. The gold he had earned from this job felt like tainted blood money, a reminder of the darkness that now consumed his soul. From that day forward, Hadvar was known as the most feared mercenary in the exiled lands. His name struck fear into the hearts of all who heard it, his reputation as a ruthless killer spreading far and wide. As he rode off into the sunset, the wind whipping through his hair and the blood of his enemies staining his hands, Hadvar knew that he was forever bound to a life of violence and death. But deep down, hidden beneath the armor of a hardened killer, a spark of humanity still flickered within him, a glimmer of the man he once was, before the desert had claimed his soul.